If you were standing in front of a vast ocean and it suddenly split in two, would you believe it was a miracle or just an illusion? The story of the Red Sea, of Moses and Pharaoh, has long been one of the most haunting images in the Bible. For many, it is the ultimate proof of God's absolute power. But for others, it is nothing more than a legend, an ancient tale written to inspire faith and reverence in the hearts of people. For thousands of years, humanity has continued to argue. Did the parting of the Red Sea really happen? Did tens of thousands of people truly escape Egypt, walking across a dry pathway in the middle of the sea, while behind them was the mighty army with Pharaoh's famous chariots? And even more importantly, could it be that deep beneath the sea today, there are still remnants, silent but enduring through millennia, reminding us that this might have once taken place? Just imagine, in the salty water and the thick coral, you see a faint metallic circle, a chariot wheel covered in moss and sea salt. And right next to it, fragments of fossilized bones, twisted pieces of metal structures, all like whispers from the past, echoing into the present. This is no longer a story of imagination. These are traces. They are reminders. What would happen if I told you that real evidence still exists today, and that together we are about to uncover it on this very journey? The setting of the story. Let us go back thousands of years to the land of ancient Egypt, where Pharaoh ruled with absolute power. That empire was not only wealthy and strong because of the fertile Nile River, but also mighty thanks to its skilled armies and its remarkable civilization. Yet in that same land, a small nation, the Israelites, were forced to live in misery as slaves, compelled to labor under the lash, building great monuments for an empire that was never theirs. For generations, the cries of the Israelites rose in despair. They longed for the day they would be delivered, the day someone would rise to lead them out of Egypt's chains. And then, in the flow of history, a name appeared: Moses. His life was a sequence of dramatic turns. As a child, he escaped Pharaoh's brutal decree of death, was found by the Egyptian princess, and was raised inside the palace, growing up like a prince. Yet the blood of the Israelites still flowed through his veins. Moses could not ignore the suffering of his people. When he killed an Egyptian overseer, his fate changed. He fled into the desert, living as an exile, until the Lord called to him through the burning bush and gave him a mission to lead the Israelites out of Egypt and bring them to the promised land. That mission of deliverance began with a confrontation that seemed impossible. Moses, once trembling at the call, now had to stand before the greatest throne of the ancient world, face to face with Pharaoh, the king who not only saw himself as a god, but who also commanded the strength of an empire. Moses lifted his head and said, "Let my people go." Pharaoh mocked him. He refused. And that refusal opened the way for a series of disasters that shook all of Egypt. The river turning into blood, swarms of frogs, hail, locusts, and darkness covering the land. The climax came on the night of mourning, when every firstborn of Egypt died. Only then did Pharaoh finally relent and allow the Israelites to leave. But freedom lasted only a moment. When Pharaoh realized he had lost an immense workforce, he changed his mind. He gathered soldiers, chariots, and war horses, the finest force in Egypt, and charged out in fury. Ahead of the Israelites stretched the vast sea. Behind them rose clouds of dust, the roar of chariots, the pounding hooves of horses. On one side was despair, on the other side was death. An entire nation was cornered. Before them, the endless sea. Behind them, the Egyptian army. No escape, no chance, only fear closing in. Imagine you were one of them. You hear the cries of children. You see mothers clutching their babies. You watch men and elders with terror in their eyes. The sound of chariots grows closer. The sea still stretches endlessly. You know you cannot swim across. You know you cannot run away. You know death is near. And in that moment of despair, Moses stepped forward. He raised his staff. In front of him were only waves. But from the faith in his heart and the power given by the Lord, something no one could believe began to unfold. The Bible tells us that the waters parted. A strong wind blew all night, pushing the sea back and leaving a dry path in the middle. Two mighty walls of water rose on each side, like a miraculous gateway opening for the Israelites to pass through. They were astonished. They trembled, yet step by step the multitude of tens of thousands walked into that strange path. Behind them, Pharaoh pressed on. He drove his army forward, his chariots rolling across the dry path. Egypt's mighty forces rushed in, confident that in moments they would crush the rebellious slaves. But when the Israelites reached the far shore, Moses raised his staff once more. The waters crashed down. The path disappeared, the towering walls of water collapsed, and in an instant, the greatest army of Egypt was swallowed by the sea. This story has been told through generations, becoming one of the greatest miracles of the Bible. It is a symbol of deliverance, of faith, and of a power far beyond human strength. Yet the question remains, is everything we have just heard only a legend, or was it truly a historical event that once took place? If it is just myth, why has it endured with such force, surviving thousands of years, etched deeply into the memory of humankind? If it is real, then where is the evidence? Can we find any trace, even the smallest clue, proving that the sea once parted? This is the moment we step into the next part. When legend meets science, when faith faces truth, and when secrets buried beneath the waves may finally be revealed before our eyes. Scientific and archaeological theories. For centuries, scholars, researchers, and scientists have tried to find reasonable explanations for the story of the Red Sea parting. For them, a miracle is a concept too difficult to accept. So they turned to nature, searching for physical phenomena that might explain this seemingly extraordinary event. One of the most frequently mentioned theories is the effect of powerful winds. Many scientists believe that if a strong wind blew continuously for many hours from a certain direction, it could push the seawater back and expose a dry strip of land. This phenomenon is called wind set-down. A study by scientists at the University of Colorado simulated this event on computers and concluded that under special conditions, winds blowing at about 60 miles per hour, which is about 96 kilometers per hour, for several hours could cause shallow waters to retreat, creating a temporary pathway. At first glance, this theory seems plausible. It shows that nature itself could create what looks like a miracle. But the question is, how could such a phenomenon occur at the exact moment the Israelites were trapped? How could the wind arrive precisely when Moses lifted his staff? And more importantly, how could this random natural phenomenon keep a dry pathway open long enough for tens of thousands of people to cross, only to collapse immediately when Pharaoh's army rushed in? Other researchers have turned to the tides. They argue that perhaps during a special tidal cycle, the water receded enough to expose a strip of land. And when the tide returned, the floodwaters poured back in, drowning the Egyptian army. This theory is based on natural law and may sound reasonable to those who wish to deny the supernatural. But just like the strong wind theory, it cannot explain the strange timing. The tides follow a predictable cycle, but for them to occur exactly when Moses stood before the sea and exactly when Pharaoh drove his army forward seems more like orchestration than coincidence. And if it was orchestrated, then who orchestrated it? Some have even suggested the possibility of an earthquake. A seismic event under the sea could shift the seabed, temporarily changing the flow of water, exposing a passage, and then quickly closing it. Such events have indeed happened in parts of the world, but just like the other theories, it fails to answer the question, why at that exact moment? Scientific theories, no matter how fascinating, always stop at the word possible. They open up scenarios of nature's influence, but they cannot erase the sense that something greater than chance is at work. Because a random natural event can happen anytime, anywhere. But for it to happen at the right time, in the right place, within the exact historical circumstances, it is difficult to call that chance. And then the archaeologists entered the scene. They did not rely only on simulations or theories. They dove into the Red Sea. They searched for tangible evidence, things the human eye could see and the human hand could touch. And there, beneath the deep blue waters, they found discoveries that shook the world. Strange shapes were discovered lying silently on the seabed. Among the coral, there were circular metallic objects. There were square frames, twisted and covered with layers of growth. Upon closer inspection, many experts believed these to be chariot wheels, axles, and the remains of Egyptian war chariots. Imagine it. In the depths of the sea, where no one could possibly drive a chariot, objects with the distinctive shapes of wheels still remain. Many of them are covered in coral, but their forms are still recognizable. Some were identified as having structures similar to four-spoked wheels, which appeared only during a specific period of Egyptian history. There were even circular objects plated with gold, the kind of material Egyptian nobility used to decorate royal chariots. If these were only coincidences, why were they located in the exact area described in the Bible? If they were not relics, then why do their shapes match the designs of ancient Egyptian chariots? Not only that, researchers also found large stone pillars on both sides of the sea, dating back thousands of years. On these pillars were inscriptions in ancient writing. Some scholars believe these pillars were erected to mark the place where the miracle of the Red Sea took place. And here arises the great question. If the Bible were only myth, then why are there such physical evidences beneath the sea, matching so precisely? Science can suggest theories about wind, tides, or earthquakes, but science cannot explain why there are metallic objects, why there are chariot wheels, or why there are stone pillars with ancient inscriptions standing in the very place where Moses is said to have led the Israelites across thousands of years ago. That is the difference between possible and happened. A theory exists only on paper, but the remains beneath the sea are there, defying time, challenging the skeptical mind. This has forced many scientists to stop and reflect. Perhaps indeed there was a natural phenomenon. But if that phenomenon coincided perfectly with the account in the Bible, and if archaeological evidence still lies there as witness, then is it still reasonable to call it coincidence? Some say that a miracle is simply the perfect arrangement of natural forces used at the right time, in the right place, for a divine purpose. Others believe that a miracle cannot be reduced to coincidence. It is the mark of a supernatural hand. Wherever you stand in matters of faith, what has been found beneath the Red Sea has opened another door. That door takes us beyond abstract debates and into the realm of tangible evidence. And when evidence speaks, every theory becomes small. Remember, Pharaoh's goal was not only to capture escaped slaves, it was also a display of power. The Egyptian Empire wanted to prove that no nation could ever escape their grip. And it was in the very place where they sought to crush the Israelites that power revealed itself. It might have been wind, it might have been tides, but the final outcome cannot be denied. The greatest army of Egypt vanished beneath the sea. If such an event really happened, history must have left traces. And now, as we stand before the metallic circles, the wheels buried in coral, the ancient stone pillars, the question is no longer, is it possible? But how shall we explain it? Legend or truth? Coincidence or design? Science or miracle? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere on the boundary between the two. But whatever it may be, The very evidence beneath the waves has transformed the story of the Red Sea from a religious legend into a historical mystery. Eyewitnesses and discoveries. The story of the Red Sea does not end within the pages of the Bible, nor does it rest only in the theories of scholars. For decades, real people, real expeditions, have ventured into those legendary waters in search of the truth. And what they brought back has astonished the world. One of the most remarkable names is Ron Wyatt, an amateur explorer filled with passion. In the late 20th century, he and his team made repeated dives into the Gulf of Aqaba, a branch of the Red Sea, believed to be the route the Israelites once took. His images and reports sparked a wave of intense debate. Ron Wyatt claimed that he saw and filmed unusual objects on the seabed. They were circular shapes covered in coral, with structures resembling chariot wheels. There were long horizontal axles and distorted shapes that still revealed familiar outlines. Some wheels were even said to have golden rims, decorations once reserved for the royal chariots of Egyptian nobility. Picture that scene. You dive into the deep blue water. Sunlight barely filters down through the waves. Around you are coral, fish, and lifeless stones. But suddenly you see a circle. It does not look like natural coral. It has structure, it has form. You swim closer and you recognize it. It is a wheel that has lain still for thousands of years, covered with coral as hard as stone. Those films and photographs, though controversial, have led millions of people around the world to ask the question, could this be living proof of Pharaoh's army being swallowed by the sea? Not only that, explorers also discovered a large stone pillar on the Saudi Arabian side of the Red Sea. The pillar bore ancient inscriptions, though many had been eroded by time. Some scholars believe this pillar was erected by King Solomon himself to mark the place where the Israelites crossed the Red Sea. If true, this would mean that people in ancient times had already identified the exact location of the miracle and left behind a stone monument that still survives today. On the opposite shore, on the Egyptian side, a similar pillar was found, though it was more badly damaged. The existence of two symmetrical stone pillars on opposite coasts makes the theory even more compelling. This was the place where an entire nation crossed. Many expeditions followed. Researchers from Sweden, Norway, and the United States conducted modern diving surveys using underwater cameras and even robotic explorers. While the results were not always clear, most recorded the presence of strange structures on the seabed. Circles, long axles, and shapes that seemed artificial, completely different from natural coral formations. Skeptics argued that these were only coincidences. Coral, they said, can grow into unusual shapes. Human imagination, they claimed, had exaggerated what was found. But if these were only coincidences, why did the shapes so closely resemble four-spoked wheels, a design unique to ancient Egypt? If it were mere chance, why were these objects concentrated in the exact area the Bible describes and not scattered across other parts of the Red Sea? Some experts analyzed further, pointing out that coral rarely grows in perfectly circular forms. Yet on the seabed, circular corals were found encasing metallic cores. When the coral is cut away, the structure of a wheel can be clearly seen. This only strengthens the belief that these are indeed the remains of chariots buried for millennia. There are even reports of fossilized bones being discovered. Although dating them precisely remains difficult, their presence sends shivers down the spine. If these were the bones of Egyptian soldiers who perished in the waters, then what the Bible recounts is no longer just legend, but flesh and blood history. Imagine yourself in that moment. You are an explorer, diving into the sea with only the faintest hope. You do not expect to find anything beyond coral and sand. But then, in the dim light of the deep, you see the outline of a wheel. Your heart races, you tremble with excitement, because you know, right before your eyes, could be evidence of one of the greatest events in human history. And when you rise to the surface, gasping for fresh air, you realize you have touched a secret buried for thousands of years. Not everyone believes these reports. Many mainstream scholars argue that the evidence is insufficient, that the images are unclear, and that more thorough research is needed. But even amidst skepticism, one thing cannot be denied. There are strange objects on the seabed of the Red Sea, and their shapes and structures bear a striking resemblance to Egyptian chariots. If those metallic fragments truly came from Pharaoh's chariots, then the entire world would have to ask, was this truly a miracle? For if it is true, then the story is no longer just a religious legend. It becomes a historical event with tangible evidence. It forces skeptics to face the reality that the Red Sea once parted, and it compels humanity to rethink the boundary between science and faith. Modern expeditions have reignited the fire of debate. Some rejoice, believing their faith has been confirmed. Others fiercely deny it, fearing that if they accept it, their long-held theories will collapse. Yet the truth still lies there, beneath the sea, waiting to be uncovered. Perhaps all it would take is one more discovery, one piece of undeniable evidence, and the entire world would have to acknowledge that the Red Sea truly did part. And if that day comes, will we be ready to face that truth? The expeditions, the footage, the photographs from beneath the Red Sea have brought forth images that shook the world. The image of a golden wheel, the image of human bones, the image of war horses lying still under coral. This is no longer just a story. This is evidence. In that moment, everything written in the Bible seemed to come alive. You are no longer only hearing an ancient tale passed down through generations. You are looking at real traces, preserved under the sea for thousands of years, now revealed before your eyes. If these objects are truly the remains of Pharaoh's army, then we are standing before one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history. It does not only confirm an event in the Bible, but also proves that the power of the Lord has been marked by undeniable physical evidence. But at the same time, the debate grows fiercer than ever. Some scientists immediately ask, are we certain these objects are Egyptian chariots? Could they be nothing more than coral formations with strange shapes? Could our imagination have rushed to give historical meaning to a blurry image beneath the sea? Such doubts are not without reason. Science demands clear proof, verifiable experiments, and objective data. But think for a moment, if these are only coral, then why are the shapes so precise? If this is only coincidence, why do we see not just wheels, but also axles, entire structures that connect together? And why are they all found exactly in the area the Bible describes? At what point does coincidence stop being coincidence? That question strikes like a hammer against the wall of skepticism. Some believe this is the final confirmation, that the miracle of the Red Sea truly happened, and now we see flesh and blood evidence. They rejoice, they are moved, they see it as a victory of faith over doubt. But others stubbornly reject it. They refuse to admit it, because admission means having to change their entire worldview. Because once the miracle is real, then what is written in the Bible is no longer just symbolism or metaphor. It is truth. And that truth has the power to shake the very foundation of the modern worldview. But perhaps this is not only about archaeology or science. It is also a story about faith. Science may doubt, but history is whispering that the Red Sea truly parted. Sit and reflect for a moment. A small nation, oppressed, hunted with no escape. They cried out, they despaired, and then a path opened in the sea. It was a moment that changed destiny, not only theirs, but the destiny of human history. because from that event a people were delivered, a faith was shaped, and the later pages of the Bible were written from that defining moment. If it were only legend, how could it leave such a powerful mark in humanity's memory? If it were only metaphor, why would physical evidence rise from the deep to challenge us? There are moments in history when science and faith are no longer parallel lines, but meet at a single point. That point is where reason must admit there are things beyond human understanding, and the Red Sea is one of those points. Picture the scene again. Tens of thousands of people walking across a dry path between two towering walls of water. The roar of waves on either side, the wind rushing against their faces, yet their feet still moving forward because they trusted in the promise of the Lord. And when they reached the far shore, Pharaoh's army charged in, confident they would crush the slaves. But in an instant, the waters collapsed, drowning them all. And thousands of years later, under coral, under sand, the wheels, the axles, the bones still lie there as a reminder. You may call it coincidence, you may call it chance, but to those who believe, it is evidence. If this is real, then we are standing before the clearest proof of the power of the Lord, and that power is not only in the past, it still echoes today. Because every time people are cornered, every time there is no way out, a path is opened, not by accident, but because faith leads the way. This is the true strength of the Red Sea story. It is not only a historical memory, it is a living metaphor for each of our journeys. When life drives you to the edge, when before you is a wall of water and behind you an enemy in pursuit, what will you do? Will you collapse, or will you walk forward in faith that there is still a way? That faith, thousands of years ago, saved an entire nation, and today it can still save every person. The climax of the Red Sea story is not only in the sea parting, not only in Pharaoh's army being swallowed. The true climax is the moment people realize that power does not rest in the hands of the mighty, but in the hands of the Almighty. It was a complete reversal of history. An empire that seemed invincible fell in a single night. A people who seemed doomed to destruction became survivors, carrying the memory of the miracle to pass on to future generations. And today, when we look at the evidence beneath the Red Sea, we do not only see traces of an ancient battle, we see a message that faith can open a path even in despair. The image of a golden wheel, the image of human bones, the image of war horses under coral. These are no longer symbols. They are evidence. And that evidence tells the story, not with words, but with its silent existence. Science may still debate, dissect, and doubt, but some truths need no debate because they exist regardless of anyone's permission. The Red Sea once parted. And that story is not only for the past, it is a reminder for the present, and it is hope for the future. From the legend in the Bible to the evidence beneath the sea, whether you believe it or not, whether you see it as a supernatural miracle or as a coincidental natural phenomenon, it cannot be denied that the story of the Red Sea has become one of the most symbolic events in human history. We have walked the journey from the pages of Scripture where Moses lifted his staff and the sea parted. We have listened to scientific theories, from strong winds to tides to earthquakes. We have dived into the Red Sea in our imagination, seeing wheels covered in coral, ancient stone pillars, and traces that made our hearts skip a beat. And finally, we have stood before a climax of faith and evidence, where past, present, and belief intertwine as one. Everything we have just experienced in this journey leads back to one question. Do you believe this was a miracle or only coincidence? If you believe it was a miracle, then this story is not just about an event in the past. It is a reminder that the power of the Lord is still present, that even in the darkest moments, a path can open before you. If you believe it was only coincidence, then think again. How many coincidences in history have had the power to change an entire nation, to shape an entire civilization, to leave traces still existing thousands of years later beneath the sea? How many coincidences have been told and retold for millennia, touching billions of hearts, still making us tremble when we speak of them? Perhaps the answer does not lie simply in the words miracle or coincidence. Perhaps the answer lies within you, in how you see the world, in the faith you choose to keep, and in what you decide to believe is truth. The story of the Red Sea is not just a distant memory, it is a mirror reflecting our journey today. Because every person has a Red Sea in their life. Every person has faced moments with no way forward, with a wall of water ahead and darkness pursuing behind. And the question for you is, will you choose fear, or will you choose to walk forward in faith? Perhaps that is the greatest message of this miracle, not just that the sea once parted, but that even in the darkest hour there is still a way out, that faith can carve a path through the impossible. And if the evidence beneath the sea truly is the remains of Pharaoh's chariots, then it is more than just proof of an ancient story. It is a message from the past that this power was real and it still echoes today. From the legend in the Bible to the evidence beneath the sea, the story of the Red Sea has and will continue to shake humanity to its core. So the final question I leave with you is this. Do you believe this was a miracle, or only coincidence? If you find this story astonishing, make sure to subscribe, share, and do not miss the next videos, because many more secrets of the Bible are still waiting to be discovered.